Isaias strengthened to a hurricane overnight and currently is moving to the northwest across the southern Bahamas. Isaias is forecast to remain a hurricane with some changes in intensity as it moves northwest across the Bahamas, then near the east coast of Florida through the weekend. The forecast has been consistent in showing the system turning to the northeast, then accelerating up the southeast U.S. coast, passing South Carolina sometime on Monday. There is some uncertainty as to how strong the system will be as it nears, but the current forecast indicates Category 1 hurricane strength. There are increasing risks of impacts from winds, heavy rainfall, and storm surge in South Carolina based on the latest forecast trends, which takes the center of Isaias closer to the South Carolina coast. Additional changes in the track and timing should be expected with the approach of Isaias still a few days away. It should also be noted that a hurricane remaining offshore will have significantly less impacts than something moving along the immediate coast or certainly onshore along the South Carolina coast. So now's the time to begin your hurricane preparations, especially for residents living along the coast of South Carolina. You can find preparedness information along with the latest forecast from the National Hurricane Center at hurricanes.gov. Thank you.
Thank you, John Keith. And again, these South Carolina Emergency Management Division has these hurricane guides. They really have a lot of great information in there for those who are looking for good information, and I presume this is on the website and can be easily accessed. Just a number of points about this storm, this Hurricane Isaias. We've been through these before, as you know, so we are fully prepared, as you have seen in other hurricanes and storms. So we're ready. Right now, we have no intention of issuing a hurricane-related security order. That is, no state of emergency should be issued for this hurricane at this time or this storm at this time. We have no intention of issuing an emergency evacuation order at this time. No intention of emergency evacuation order. It looks like it will not be necessary. We certainly hope not, but we will certainly keep you informed. Also, we would ask again that particularly the coastal residents, be sure and take a look at this. We have some new people that have moved into the state and some that may have forgotten some of the precautions that are necessary. But we ask you to stay informed, to stay tuned to the official messaging outlets in the state. You'll be seeing John Q. and others. Get your information there, and let's be safe. But right now, we're hoping this storm will not hit us hard if it hits at all. But at this time, we have no intention at all of declaring any sort of evacuation at this time. Mr. Stenson, Emergency Management Division.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Well, we're closely monitoring, obviously, the forecast and working with county emergency managers at the local level, certainly our state partners and the National Weather Service to respond to this storm. And Team South Carolina has had a great deal of experience in the last several years preparing for, responding to, and recovering from hurricanes, and that's without a doubt our greatest strength that we have here in South Carolina. A major part of our recent planning has been how to conduct emergency operations in a COVID environment. And we have worked closely with DHEC and our other state partners to prevent the spread of the virus during any kind of storm response. Accordingly, we have developed and published a separate plan to conduct hurricane operations in a COVID environment, and that includes providing transportation and sheltering, and that also includes, as a part of that, screening, personal protective equipment, isolation areas in terms of the shelters, and then also adjusted feeding arrangements to maintain that social distancing. We've never actually conducted hurricane operations during a pandemic here in South Carolina, but we are confident that those plans that are in place right now that we have will carry us through that and be successful. We were able to test those plans on a small scale in April during the April tornadoes when we actually sheltered about 200 residents at the time. So we've actually had an opportunity again to test that on a small scale. Currently, we're watching the progress of the hurricane, obviously, in the Caribbean. We started yesterday conducting daily conference calls, coordination calls with the counties to identify any issues or unmet needs that they might have. And to this point, there have none in that area. So no support required right now. And as the governor mentioned, no evacuations are being planned, but we will probably have to support some sheltering for those people that may be in structures that they feel are unsafe during tropical storm or hurricane force winds, the possibility there. So, but that'll be as requested by the local authorities. And also, as the governor mentioned, just as we're preparing, we'd ask all the citizens here in South Carolina to prepare for not just this particular event, but any other event that could happen here in South Carolina. Things that they need to do to review for their personal safety and their personal plans, and things like emergency supplies with enough bottled water and food for non-perishable food for at least 3 days, and having flashlights, extra batteries, weather radios, that sort of thing. Copies of important documents like insurance and birth certificates, so you can get at those quickly. Certainly preparing your home for emergency conditions by making sure the gutters are cleaned out, storm drains are clear, and lawn furniture, anything that might blow around is also secured, and that sort of thing. Keeping your cell phones and mobile devices charged in case of power outage is very critical. And then also 60% of our residents have pets. They need to have a pet plan and make sure that you can take care of those while you've got this particular or any particular event going on. And then, as the governor also mentioned, stay tuned to your local trusted verified sources for the latest news, and make sure that you stay informed as situations unfold and as they progress. So a couple last items. One is that hurricanes are not just coastal events. They will be sometimes inland impacts, certainly throughout the low country and back into the Midlands, and not expecting from this particular storm anything in the upstate, but if we ever have a serious Category 3 hurricane here in South Carolina again, there's no doubt that there'll be impacts in the upstate as well. You could end up with hurricane force winds up there. So we need to look at it from a holistic statewide standpoint. So we would encourage all our citizens to develop their own plan, be their own emergency manager, identify their threats, and come up with how they were going to operate in an emergency situation and in a threat environment. We've got a couple of good tools to help them with that. We've got our website at scemd.org, which is full of information on how to prepare for and how you operate during an event and then after an event as well. And then we've also got a mobile device, the South Carolina Emergency Manager app that you can carry around with you all the time. You can actually have your own plan in there, keep important numbers in there, inventories of your supplies and that sort of thing. So it's well worth downloading onto your mobile phone, and that's available at the Apple Store or at Google Play. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Kim Stinson. Are there any questions? Yes, sir. Joe?
Governor, what is it about this storm that says an evacuation order may not be necessary? What are the conditions you're expecting this as an evacuation?
Well, those are the ones that John Quirello outlined. At this point does not look like we're going to reach that kind of a situation. But we're monitoring closely. If it cuts deeper into the coast, if it gets stronger, we'll be the first ones to let you know. Yes, sir.
Florida canceled some of their coronavirus testing sites in preparation for the storm. Do you plan to do something similar?
Say it again, somewhat.
I said Florida canceled or
Florida
closed
canceled?
some.
No, ma'am, we're not planning on that at this point. And we have a lot of them going on, as you know, and urge people to take advantage of it. You can go to Accelerate SC and find out exactly when and where they are all around the state. Yes, sir.
This is for the Emergency Management Division. What are some of the biggest changes that you're making this year to deal with not only hurricane season but the pandemic?
Okay. Well, in terms of the hurricane piece of it, is that two critical areas, and I mentioned them briefly before, is transportation and sheltering. On the transportation side, we have to identify transportation assets, primarily buses, to move those personnel that do not have any their own transportation to safe sites, to shelters. So normally it's just a matter of putting people on the bus and taking them to the next location. But in this particular case, that there has to be a screening process making sure that nobody is visibly ill, putting them on the bus. We can't put as many people on the bus as you normally do, have to spread them out so that there's more trips required. And then, of course, personal protective equipment, making sure everybody is masked while they're operating. And some of the other things, like in the SEOC right here, you see some of the shields in at our work areas. Most of you have been here before. We have sometimes several hundred people in the building, so we've had to make arrangements for that. We're going to have limited number of people here working remotely, and then sometimes working remotely here in the building itself. So there's a lot of different things that we've taken a look at in terms of how we want to adjust our operations.
What's the plan if somebody is being evacuated and they do show symptoms? What happens to that person?
Well, they'd be put in an isolation area initially, and then they'd be transported to probably a non-congregate shelter, hotel, or that sort of thing.
More questions? Yes, ma'am.
Governor, what are your biggest concerns, maybe not even with this hurricane, but just hurricane season in general, and having to also combat COVID-19, or people that might be scared to evacuate because they don't want to go to a shelter or a friend's house because of COVID-19? What do you say to those people?
Well, that's you've put your finger. That's the whole point. Is we have two situations happening at the same time. As Mr. Stinson said, to our memory, we've never had that happen before. But that does complicate things, of course. It adds another layer of planning and expertise, but we've been planning for these kind of things all along. And we'll have to be careful, and providing the proper information to the citizens will be very important. But it is, you're correct, it does make things a little more difficult to do, but we're confident that we can get them done. Yes, sir.
For Mr. Stinson, you mentioned that there might be some people who may seek shelter. What kind of places would they be going in for this particular storm? They don't think their structure could stand a tropical storm.
Yeah, exactly. Well, they'll go to a shelter normally on our list of hurricane shelters. And then there's right now about 3 counties that are taking a look at the possibility of having to open up shelters. And those are for those people. It's not because of the surge or the water. It's because they might be living in a home that might not withstand tropical storm force winds, or in a low-lying area or something like that. So we expect fairly limited number of people, as the governor also mentioned, in terms of ordering somebody to evacuate. We would expect that there would be very low compliance. And then we've discussed that with the counties. All the counties say the same thing. And then just as a footnote to what the governor also said, is that we have coordinated very closely with the local authorities down along the coast, and all of them are confident that we can get through this right now without any evacuation.
If I could just follow up on that, if you do end up opening shelters, which sounds right now is only an if, are people going to need to bring masks and sanitizing products with them? Are you going to have all of that provided?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. We actually have pre-positioned PPE, this hand sanitizer and the masks down in the coastal area, so that shouldn't be a problem.
Are there any more questions?
Governor, do you recommend that people who are in lower coastal areas seek higher ground, even if you're not mandating an evacuation, or is that not necessary in your mind?
That will all depend on the course that the storm takes. But as Director Stinson said, the best way to approach this is you need to be your own emergency management division. Be sure to inform yourself. There'll be plenty of information if you seek it from the official sources, and make your own common sense decisions. Any more questions? We thank you very much.